The sound of distant drums pulled him out of darkness. His head felt heavy, his vision blurry, and for a moment, he didn't know where he was. The smell of smoke and something metallic filled his nose. When his eyes finally adjusted, he realized. He was lying on a bed made of animal hides, inside a dim tent lit by flickering firelight. The walls weren't made of fabric like human tents. They looked like layered scales. Shimmering under the fire, strange markings were painted in bright red around him, symbols that seemed both beautiful and threatening. Somewhere outside, voices chanted in a deep, strange rhythm, and every beat of the drum seemed to echo in his chest. He tried to sit up, but a sharp pain in his ribs made him gasp. That's when he remembered the battle, the explosions, the alien soldiers closing in. His unit had been ambushed, and he'd been hit. But how did he survive? And why wasn't he dead or in a prison cell? Before he could figure it out, the chanting outside stopped. A shadow blocked the light at the tent's entrance, and a tall figure stepped inside. She was unlike anything he'd ever seen, towering over him, her body wrapped in heavy black armor that glimmered like molten metal. Her skin was a deep shade of gold, glowing faintly under the fire, and her hair was braided with silver rings that chimed softly when she moved. Her eyes locked on him, sharp, unblinking like a predator studying prey. She didn't speak at first, only circling him slowly. Every step she took was silent, yet it felt as if the ground trembled beneath her presence. Then she stopped and leaned close, her face inches from his. In a low, firm voice, she said in broken human words, "You are mine now." He stared at her, confused and tense. "Yours? What the hell are you talking about?" She tilted her head slightly, as if amused by his reaction. Her gaze was intense, the kind that made it impossible to look away around them. Her shadow loomed large on the tent wall, making her look even more terrifying. From outside, he heard whispers in her alien language, followed by one word in human tongue, mating heat. He didn't understand, but the tone in their voices told him it wasn't something good. The Empress, because by the way they bowed to her. He knew she was their leader, turned to the tent's entrance and gave a short command. The guards outside barked an answer. And then the sound of heavy locks clicked into place. She faced him again, her expression unreadable. "You live because I choose it," she said slowly, making sure he understood every word. Her voice was deep, commanding, yet there was something else in it, something dangerous. "You will stay here," she continued. "No one touch you. Only me." He tried to stand, but she stepped forward and without effort pressed a single hand against his chest. The force was like a wall. She didn't even push hard. Yet he couldn't move. Her touch was warm, almost burning through his shirt. For a strange moment, he felt her heartbeat, fast and heavy, like she had been running, but she hadn't. "What do you want from me?" he asked, his voice lower now, almost a whisper. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "You will see." Soon, the fire crackled between them, shadows dancing across her face. He could hear the faint sound of her breathing, steady, but with an edge, as if she was holding something back. The way she looked at him was not like an enemy studying a prisoner. It was something far more primal. He glanced toward the entrance, wondering if he could make a run for it, but the moment his eyes moved, her hand shot out, grabbing his chin and forcing him to meet her gaze again. "You are mine," she repeated, her voice lower, heavier. It wasn't a request, or even a threat. It was a statement, a law. Outside, the chanting began again. Louder this time, drums pounded like a racing heartbeat, and the alien words carried through the tent. He didn't know what they were saying, but he could feel it. They were calling for something. Maybe some kind of ritual. The Empress stepped back. Her eyes never leaving his, she removed a single piece of her armor, revealing skin marked with glowing patterns that pulsed faintly. The light from those markings painted the inside of the tent in shifting colors. It was beautiful and terrifying. You will help me survive, she said, her voice now softer. Almost a whisper. And if you fail, you die. He swallowed hard, realizing that whatever was coming next, it wasn't just about war or politics. It was something much more dangerous and much more personal. The night in the alien war camp was alive with heat and noise. Outside the tent, fires burned high, sending sparks into the dark sky. The alien warriors sang deep, throaty songs, their voices blending with the steady beat of drums. Inside, the humans sat on the bed of hides, staring at the figure who refused to leave. His side, the Empress stood near the entrance, her tall frame casting a shadow that stretched across the entire tent. Every time the fire outside flared, her golden skin seemed to glow even brighter. She watched him as if guarding a rare treasure or a dangerous weapon. He wasn't sure which. You are still here, he muttered. Unable to keep the frustration from his voice, her head turned sharply toward him, and for a moment the air between them grew heavy. I told you, she said, in her deep, accented voice, you are mine. Before he could respond, a soldier appeared at the entrance, bowing deeply. The Empress spoke to him in her language. Quick and sharp, the soldier's eyes flicked toward the human, then back to her, and he left without saying another word. She stepped forward, her boots silent on the floor. You will not leave this tent, she said, her voice low but firm. No one will touch you. Only me, he frowned. Why? What's so special about me? Her eyes softened slightly, but her tone didn't change. It has started, she said. And for a moment, he thought he saw her hand tremble. You do not know. But you will. As the hours passed, he tried to find a way out. The entrance was guarded by two massive warriors with spears as long as he was tall. The walls were solid, layered with some kind of hardened alien scale. There was no way to cut through it. And even if he managed to escape the tent, the camp outside was a maze of armed soldiers and glowing fires. When he turned back, he found her watching him again. Her breathing was heavier now, and there was a faint shimmer of sweat on her forehead. The firelight caught the glowing patterns on her skin, and they seemed brighter than before. You are making this harder, she said suddenly. He blinked, confused. Making what harder? She stepped closer, so close he could feel the heat from her body. My heat, she whispered, and the word made his stomach twist with a strange mix of fear and curiosity. He didn't fully understand her meaning, but her eyes told him it was dangerous for both of them. Then, without warning, she grabbed his wrist, her grip like steel. He tried to pull away, but she held him easily, her golden eyes locked on his. You will stay, she said again. You will help me. Aloud. Cheer erupted outside, and the sound of weapons striking shields filled the air. The Empress glanced toward the noise, then back at him. It is my heat night, she explained slowly. Others will want to challenge me, but you are mine. Before he could ask more, she turned and ordered something to the guards. They nodded and began dragging heavy chains across the entrance, locking it from the inside. He realized then he wasn't just a guest here. He was a prisoner, trapped with a woman whose touch burned like fire. Her eyes softened for the briefest moment, almost like she was fighting something inside her. Then she leaned in close, her voice a low growl. If you run, I will find you. She straightened, lifted her chin, and returned to her place by the entrance. Standing like a sentinel, the fire crackled. The drums continued outside, and in the space between those sounds, he could hear her slow, steady, breathing like a predator, waiting for the right moment to strike. He sat back down on the bed, every instinct telling him he had to get out. But a darker thought crept into his mind. If she was telling the truth, and this heat was real, then maybe running wasn't just impossible, Maybe it was suicide. The night dragged on, and the air inside the tent grew hotter. It wasn't the heat from the fire outside. It was something else. Something coming from her. The human sat with his back against the wall, watching her pace like a caged predator. Her steps were slow, deliberate, but every few moments she would stop, press a hand to her chest, and take in a shaky breath. Her golden skin glistened with sweat. The glowing patterns on her arms and neck, now pulsing faster. It was like he could see her heartbeat on her skin. "Are you sick?" he asked finally. Breaking the silence, her head snapped toward him, and for a moment, her sharp gaze softened. "No," she said, but her voice was lower, almost hoarse. "It is my heat. It grows." He didn't know much about alien biology, but the way she looked now was different. Her eyes had a strange brightness. Her movements were less controlled, and there was a faint tremor in her hands. "Can't you?" "I don't know." "Do something about it?" he asked carefully. Her lips curved into a faint, almost tired smile. "Yes." "You?" His heart thumped hard. "Me?" "What do you mean?" She stepped forward, cutting the space between them in 2 strides. He froze. As she leaned down, her face close enough that he could feel the heat radiating off her skin. "You will help me, or I will die," she said simply, like it was a fact, not a threat. He swallowed hard, his mind racing. He wasn't a healer. He wasn't a doctor, and whatever she was asking didn't sound like anything he could just fix. But the way her breathing grew heavier with every passing moment made him realize she wasn't exaggerating. Outside, the sounds of the camp carried through the walls, the crackle of fire, the occasional shout of guards, the stomp of heavy boots. From time to time, a soldier's voice would call something toward the tent. But the Empress ignored them. Her attention was entirely on him. She tried to keep her distance, but as the hours passed, her control started slipping. At one point, she staggered and had to grab the wall for support, her armor clinking softly. He got up without thinking, reaching out to steady her. The moment his hand touched her arm, she let out a sharp breath, her body tensing. "You feel different," she said, quietly, her eyes searching his face. Her voice wasn't cold now, it was almost vulnerable. He pulled his hand back quickly, but she caught it before he could move away. For a long moment, neither of them spoke, the sound of their breathing filling the space between them. She finally let him go and stepped back, running a hand across her forehead. Her golden eyes flickered with something between frustration and longing. "You do not understand what you are to me," she said. "But you will." The temperature in the tent felt like it was rising with every heartbeat. Even he could feel the heaviness in the air now, making it hard to breathe. He realized that staying too close to her for too long made his skin feel warm, almost burning. He didn't know how much longer she could hold herself together. Then, from outside, a deep horn sounded. She stiffened immediately, her head turning toward the tent flap. "They come," she muttered, her voice tense. "Who?" he asked. Her gaze hardened. "Challengers. They will try to take me." Before he could react, she strode to the tent entrance and barked orders in her language. The guards shouted back, the sound of metal being drawn from scabbards ringing. In the night, she turned back to him, her eyes fierce. "Stay here," she commanded. "No one but me touches you." But as she stepped outside, the heat in the tent seemed to cling to him. He sat there, his pulse racing, realizing that whatever was happening to her was about to spill far beyond this tent, and he was at the center of it. The air outside the tent shook with the sound of the war horn. The deep, echoing note rolled through the camp like a wave, making every torch flicker from his place inside. The human could hear the sudden chaos shouts, the clang of weapons. Heavy footsteps pounding the ground, he pushed himself to the edge of the bed, trying to see through the small gap in the tent flap. Shadows moved quickly outside. Alien warriors rushing past with their spears and curved blades. The Empress stood in the middle of it all, her tall frame a wall against the panic. Her voice like a whip as she barked orders. Even in the middle of danger, she radiated command. But the human noticed something others might not. Her steps were slower than before. Every order she gave seemed to cost her more strength. The heat inside her was draining her, and she was forcing herself to stand tall. Suddenly, a sound ripped through the night, the sharp whistling of incoming projectiles. A moment later, the world outside the tent exploded in a spray of dirt and fire. The shockwave rattled the walls, knocking him backward. The guards at the entrance shouted, trying to hold the line, but more explosions came, closer this time. Then came the worst sound, the tearing of the tent's reinforced walls. A burning spear shot through the hide and landed just feet from him, the floor around it smoldering before he could react. The entrance ripped open and enemy warriors stormed in, their armor black and spiked. The first one lunged for him, but before the blade could strike, the Empress slammed into the attacker with bone-crushing force. Her glowing patterns blazed like fire, and her roar shook the air. She cut the enemy down in one swift motion, but there were more behind him. The fight spilled into the tent, metal clashing, the floor shaking under the weight of battle. The human ducked behind the bed, grabbing a fallen spear. He wasn't trained with alien weapons, but anything was better than nothing. Another enemy rushed him, and without thinking, he drove the spear forward. It connected, not cleanly, but enough to drop the attacker. A sharp crash made him turn. Part of the tent roof was on fire. Collapsing inward, flames leaped higher, and in the smoke and chaos, he saw the Empress stagger. One enemy blade had cut deep across her side, and she was breathing hard. But instead of retreating, she tried to shield him, her body between him and the attackers. For a moment, their eyes met through the haze of smoke and fire. Something unspoken passed between them. She was hurt, but she wasn't going to let anyone touch him. And he realized he couldn't just hide and watch her fall. Another explosion shook the ground, throwing both of them off balance. The tent poles cracked, the walls folding inward. He saw a beam falling straight toward her and moved without thinking. Throwing himself forward, he shoved her out of the way and took the brunt of the hit on his shoulder. The impact knocking the air out of him. The fire roared, heat licking at the edges of the room. The Empress was already pushing herself up, her golden eyes locking on him. She grabbed his arm and pulled him to his feet with surprising strength. For someone so injured, "You saved me," she said, her voice rough. Almost confused, he coughed. Through the smoke, "Guess that makes us even." They stumbled out through the side of the collapsing tent. It's a cool night air hitting them like a shock. Around them, the camp was chaos, warriors clashing, flames lighting the battlefield in red and gold. But through it all, she kept her grip on his arm, not letting go for even a second. And as they fought their way toward safety, he realized something had changed. She no longer looked at him as just a prize in that moment. He was a warrior beside her, and in her eyes, that meant everything. The camp was a storm of fire and steel. Smoke curled into the night sky, lit by the glow of burning tents and the flash of clashing blades. The human stumbled alongside the Empress, her grip firm on his arm as they cut through the chaos. Her breathing was heavier now, every step weighted by both her injury and the strange heat burning inside her. A group of enemy warriors charged from the left, their armor gleaming black in the firelight. The Empress shoved him back, stepping in front of him with a snarl. Her sword moved in a blur, each strike sending sparks into the air. But he saw it. Her movements weren't as sharp as before. The heat was making her reckless when one attacker slipped past her guard. The human didn't think. He grabbed a fallen shield and slammed it into the enemy. Knocking him off balance, the Empress finished the job with a clean strike, her eyes flashing toward him in surprise. "You fight," she said, her voice rough. "Trying to stay alive," he answered, gripping the shield tighter. They moved together through the battlefield. She would block and strike, and he would cover her flank, grabbing weapons from the fallen as they went. It was a strange rhythm, but it worked, like they'd been fighting side by side for years. Instead of minutes, at one point, 3 enemy warriors circled them. The human blocked the first with his shield, the second with a desperate swing of a sword he barely knew how to use. The third went for the Empress, but she turned with a roar, her glowing patterns flaring bright as she cut him down. She swayed afterward, gripping her side. He moved to steady her, and she didn't pull away. "You're burning up," he said. Feeling the heat through her armor, her eyes met his, fierce but strained. "It is my heat, and it is killing me." She didn't say it like a plea for help. She said it like a fact she'd already accepted, but he wasn't ready to accept it. They pushed deeper into the camp, and slowly, the tide began to turn. The Empress's warriors rallied to her, their voices rising in shouts as they saw her fighting with a human at her side, chosen. Some of them cried out in their language. Others pounded their weapons against their shields, chanting his name, even though they'd never met him before tonight. The human didn't understand the words, but he understood the meaning. They were beginning to see him as more than just her strange prisoner. He was someone who fought for her, who stood his ground, by the time the last enemy fell. The night was almost silent, except for the crackle of flames and the groans of the wounded. The Empress leaned heavily against him, her golden eyes still sharp but her body trembling. "You stayed," she said quietly, as if she'd expected him to run at the first chance. "Yeah," he said, his voice low. "Guess I'm stubborn." She studied him for a long moment, then gave a small nod. "To fight beside me is to be mine," she said, her voice faint but certain. And in that strange, war-torn night, he realized she wasn't just talking about the battle. The battlefield was quiet now. The enemies were gone, their bodies scattered among the burning tents. But the danger wasn't over. Inside the Empress's own body, another battle was raging. The human could feel her weight leaning heavier against him as they walked back toward the largest intact shelter. Her breathing was sharp, almost ragged, every few steps. She would stop, gripping her side, her skin burning hot, even through her armor. Her glowing patterns were brighter than ever, pulsing like molten fire under her skin. "You need a medic," he said firmly. She shook her head, her voice low. "No Manek. This is my heat's peak. If I do not bond, I die." The words made his stomach twist. He didn't fully understand alien mating cycles, but he could see it in her eyes. This was no bluff. She was standing on the edge of death, and somehow, he was the only one who could pull her back. They reached her private chamber, a stone-walled shelter far from the battlefield, guarded by 2 of her most loyal warriors. When they saw her condition, they bowed low and stepped aside without a word. Inside, the air was cooler, but it did nothing to slow her racing heartbeat. She sat heavily on a low bed, her hand trembling as she reached for the straps of her armor. He turned away, unsure if he should even be here. Her voice stopped him, soft but commanding. "Stay. I need you." He faced her, and for the first time since they met, she didn't look like the unstoppable War Empress. She looked human in her vulnerability. Her eyes were fever bright, her lips pale, her breath coming fast. "If you bond with me," she said slowly, "you may die. Your body is not made for my heat. But if you refuse, I will die tonight." The choice hit him like a blade to the chest. If he helped her, he risked his own life. If he didn't, she was gone. He thought of the way she had fought beside him, the way she had shielded him from blades, the way she had called him mine, not out of ownership, but out of something deeper. He stepped closer, his hands curling into fists. "Tell me what to do." A faint smile touched her lips, relief mixing with exhaustion. She explained the ritual in simple, broken words. A joining of life force. A sharing of heat until her body stabilized. It was dangerous because their species weren't the same if his body couldn't handle her energy. It would burn him from the inside out. He knelt in front of her, meeting her eyes. "Let's do it," he said. She reached forward, placing her hand on his chest, right over his heart. The moment her skin touched his, a shock of heat shot through him, stealing his breath. It was like fire and lightning running through his veins. He gritted his teeth, holding on as her glow spread across them both. Her breathing slowed, her trembling eased, but his vision blurred, his strength draining fast. She whispered something in her own language, a prayer, or maybe his name. The last thing he saw before darkness took him was her golden eyes, no longer fever bright, but calm and grateful. He woke to silence, not the chaos of battle, not the roar of alien drums. Just the faint hum of wind through stone. His body felt heavy, as if it had been filled with molten metal and then left to cool. When he tried to sit up, a dull ache spread. Through every muscle, the room around him was dim, lit only by a few low-burning lamps. It wasn't the tent he remembered. This was a palace chamber, the walls carved with flowing symbols of gold. Before he could gather his thoughts, a shadow moved in the doorway. The Empress stepped inside. But she wasn't in her black battle armor now. She wore long ceremonial robes of deep crimson and gold. Her hair was braided differently, finer, and her glowing skin patterns were calm and steady. She stopped beside his bed, studying him with those golden eyes. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then she said quietly, "You live." He tried to smile, though his throat was dry. "I wasn't sure I would." Her gaze softened. "Just slightly. No one ever has," she said, and there was a weight to those words. "You are the first to survive bonding with me. The first to give me life back." He remembered fragments, the burning heat, the flash of her glow, the feeling that his strength was being pulled from him. And now he understood why he had woken in this room instead of on a battlefield. She stepped closer, her hand resting lightly over his. "In our law," she said, "a mate who survives the bond is bound for life. You are my consort now." He blinked, taken aback. "Consort?" Her lips curved into a faint smile. "Husband." In your words. Before he could respond, the sound of heavy boots echoed outside. The door opened and two of her top warriors entered. Bowing low to both of them, they spoke in the alien tongue, their voices full of respect. He didn't understand the words, but he could hear his own name among them. The Empress turned to them and spoke firmly, her voice carrying the weight of command. When she was finished, the warriors straightened, saluted, and left. She looked back at him. "I told them you are to be honored. No one will touch you without your will. You stand beside me now, as equal." It was strange. Only days ago, he had been her prisoner. Now she was offering him a place beside her throne. He looked into her eyes and saw none of the cold hunger from their first meeting. Instead, there was something warmer there, gratitude, respect, and something unspoken. He didn't know if he was ready to live as the consort of an alien ruler. But he knew one thing. He had survived the impossible. And when she smiled at him, part of him didn't mind the thought of staying. Outside, the alien capital roared with cheers. They weren't just celebrating victory in battle. They were celebrating the union of their empress with the strange human who had fought for her, saved her life, and lived through her fire.